Okay, so good morning again. We are on the bottom of 67b, about 5 lines from the bottom, and we continue to discuss the issues around um, around when a when the using the produce of a field that you've borrowed or that is a mashkon as security, when that's considered interest and can't be used, and when it can't be done, and when it's considered okay. So Rav Kana, Rav Papa, Rav Ashi, lo achli b'lach yaisa. These three, they would not consume the produce of a field that was pledged as security, even if the debt was reduced. Right. As we've seen, you might consider that the reduction of the debt to be payment for the produce, and then it wouldn't be considered taking interest on the loan, but they wouldn't do it anyway. Ravina but Ravina would do it. So we saw earlier that this is something that, according to many opinions, was permitted, but wasn't considered appropriate for a Torah scholar to do. So the other three consider themselves Torah scholars, and Rav Kahana, either he just held with the other side, or he was very modest and didn't want to be considered a Torah scholar, and so he kind of he didn't abide by that restriction. Amar Zitra, what's the, like, why would you allow it? I mean, doesn't it look like you're taking interest? My time of demand. So what's the reason that Ravina would allow this? Because it's like an ancestral property. Okay, so the rules for an ancestral property, if you sell it to Hekdesh, to the temple treasury, that you or anybody else can redeem it up till the Yovel. And so even if you're, when you redeem the field, you get to use it, right? But even so, the Torah prescribes how much you have to pay to redeem the field, right? So since the Torah specifies a price for it, and it's not, and the price is basically a nominal price, right? So it's not really paying for the produce. Nonetheless, the Torah allows it. Would be the same here. Even if you're paying get a nominal reduction from the loan, then that's considered purchasing the right to consume the produce of the field, and it's not considered interest. But the other three who says that it's forbidden to do that, Amalach would say that's not a good analogy. Stay hekdeshi, Rachmana okmei apidya. The case of the ancestral field, the Torah is telling you, like, what the price is, right? So if the Torah is telling you what the price is, so fine. So that it's obvious that you're paying the price for the consuming the produce. But in the case of a loan, it still looks like interest. In other words, it wasn't a very good analogy in the first place. Ravashi said the following: the elders of Masa Machasya, which was a place in Babylonia, Stam Mashkanta Shata. If you give a property as security, and you don't specify for how long, it's for 1 year. The Gemara says, like, what does that mean? Like, for what purpose are you telling me that? The Shata, if once you've used it for a year and consumed the produce for a year, then the borrower can pay back the loan and get back the field. Vilo. But if it hasn't been a full year yet, then you can't force him to take it back yet. So Ravashi says, so that was the first statement of Ravashi. So it looks like from this statement that part of the mashkon, part of the security, the property they're giving for security, is the right to consume the produce for 1 year. The Amar Rashi, and Rashi says, Amrli Sava de Masamachasa, they also told me, my mashkanta, like what is the word mashkanta, which is security, right? Pledged property. The shchuna gabe, the root is shachen, right? It's a neighbor, like your shachen is dwelling, right? You're living in it. In other words, the property becomes the living place of the lender. Well, minus kamina, what do we need to know that for? Ladino demar mitzvah, because there is a law about neighbors, right? So if I'm selling my property, the neighboring property, owner of the neighboring property has the right of first refusal. Same would apply to the mashkan, to someone who owns who holds that property as security. If the borrower decides to sell that land, then he has to give the right of first refusal to the guy who's holding it as security. And how do we know that? Because it's called the mashkon with the root of shachen, so he's like he has the status of a neighboring property for that purpose. Amar Rava, leisel chazol katarshim papunai, v'lo kishtare mechazanai, v'lo kachachire narshai. We do not hold like these terms which will now be explained. These three things we don't follow. What are they? Ketarshe papunai, the papa tarsha sales. Ketarshe drav papa. Those are the sales that were practiced by Rav Papa. So a tarsha is a sale on credit when you pay more for late payment, for later payment. So this thing is worth $1 million, but I'm going to do a contract with you that I'll pay you 1.1 million, but I'm not going to pay you until next year. So that typically would be like interest, right? But Rav Papa said that it was okay to do this, and we already saw this before a couple of days ago. What is the second thing? Shtari mechazah documents. The zakfile l'ravcha akarna. When one partner puts up the money, and they add the profit to the capital. Because and they write it in the document. So you have a contract saying that I'm gonna put up the money for this work or for this property development, and you're going to pay me back. When you sell it for, it's now worth $1 million, you're going to sell it for 1.1 million. So we're going to split that profit. I'm going to get 50,000. You're going to get 50,000 of the profit. All right. Even though like I'm putting up the money, so it's like a loan, right? So the 50,000 profit I'm getting could be seen as interest for the money that I'm lending you. So anyway, they would write this in the shtar, and so Rava is saying this doesn't work. This is not a good shtar. We don't allow this. Miyemer to have a ravka, because you don't know there's going to be a profit, right? So write it in the contract all you want, but still the bottom line is that I'm putting up the money, so it's like a loan, and I'm profiting $50,000 on the back end when we make a profit. So that is considered interest. Abba Mar said, my father does this. But when they say that, oh, guess what? There was no profit, he believes them, right? Amalei. So that's why he allowed it, because it's not guaranteed payment, right? It really is a profit sharing thing. Okay, so even though it's written in the contract, he's willing to forego it if the profit doesn't get made. So then it's not like interest, which you contract to up front. It's more like profit share. She says, okay, fine. So your father is in the clear. What happens if it's your father's estate that's dealing with it at the back end? What happens if he dies and it's the estate that has to that is taking the profit? So maybe that profit wouldn't, maybe then the profit wouldn't be foregone. Hold on one sec. So the result of this statement of Rashi is Kishka Rashi of some people Milif Nationally. Um, uh, it's like this is quoting a pasuk that it's like a mistake that goes out from the ruler. The Nach Nafshi Dan Neymar, and the Neymar passed away. Um, so in other words, we see this in a couple of places where the words of the rabbis or tzaddikim, even they can be taken very literally and out of context. So you mentioned that what if your father dies, and what do you know? His father dies. It wasn't like they cursed him and said he should die, but just by having mentioned that possibility, it came true. So be careful what you say. And what was the third thing that we don't hold? By Ravashi says we don't hold by Chachire Narshai, leases of Narsha. The Koste Hache, it was right. Mishkan le planya are le planya. Borrower gives us land as security to the lender. The Hagar Chachara Mine. And then he leases it back to him for the produce that it produces. We don't practice that because people will say, when did the lender get the land so that he can turn it around and give it to the borrower as a lease? Like, people won't really understand what's going on here. And it looks like he's profiting from the field that he's holding as a mashkon, which is a result of the loan. So it looks like interest. But now people do write the following. I got the land as a mashkon, as a security. And I kept it for a certain period of time. And then he leased it for me. The borrower leased it back for me. So we do allow that when you do write it specifically that these are conditions, even though it may look like interest, but because we don't want to put obstacles in the marketplace, in the lending marketplace, right? If we put too many restrictions on the lender, then the lenders will stop lending. So so it's okay to do this as long as it's specified in the contract that it's being done in the proper way. V'lav milsihi, but the Gemara says no, we don't allow it after all. We even though there's a concern of Latina dalas b'fnei lavin, we don't want to discourage lenders. Still, it's still the Gemara ultimately decides this is still considered an interest type transaction, and we don't allow. Okay. Next Mishnah, Ein Moshivim Chanvani.
Adjust the microphone. You can't hear him. In the last few minutes, you barely hear him. His microphone is off.
Hang on.
That's better.
Is that better?
Yeah, much better.
Okay, you know what? I'm sorry, I forgot. I have this battery stand that has a fan on it, and if the fan goes on, then it interferes. Sorry about that.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so we're at the
Before you
Mishnah.
go on to the next Mishnah, this last sugya was painful, and I now have an idea of all these things that I can't do, but I don't really have a good idea of what I can do.
Well, there is today what's commonly practiced is a heteriska, in which all of these things are taken into consideration, and you have a contract that abides by all of these things. So there is a solution, and there is a common practice that's more or less approved. I'm sure there are different versions of it, but I remember when we bought our first house, and I was basically going to the bank the next day to sign, the mortgage papers, and my grandfather called me up and was like, "Why are you borrowing from the bank? You should borrow from me." It's like, pay me interest and it's fine. So, we had a whole heteriska, and I paid him what's essentially interest, for as long as we had that house. So there definitely are ways of doing it, although I have to say, based on that example, I think is a typical one, it's really a dodge, right? I mean, in order to function in the modern economy, you know, it wouldn't work with a ban on interest. So to my mind, the heteriska that we use today is really and actually, I mean, I think the Gemara recognizes that in a lot of these cases, it's kind of a dodge. But it's, it's structured in such a way that formally, even if the result is the same as paying interest, formally it's structured as something different. So it's one of those things that, to my mind, we found a way around it for various reasons, such as Latino dos bifnei lavin, so that there would be investment, which is another way of saying, you're not going to have a functioning economy without without loans and the lender being able to profit from the business activity.
Yeah.
So,
Thanks.
Okay. Okay, so Amos even Chenvani, Lamachsi Sachar, you can't set up the retailer with the produce that he's selling, that in a way that he has to sell for half the profit. So in other words, you can't kind of on consignment, it's kind of lending the produce to the retailer and then taking back more, taking back some of the profit. That's like interest. You can't give someone money to invest in his stock, and take half the profit. Unless you hire him like a worker. Right. So if I say to you, I'll front you, the $100,000 you need to stock your store, and you're gonna, if I'm hiring you to work in that store formally, then it's my produce, and I'm making the profit, and you're just being hired. So that is okay. And most even trying to go in Lemechza. Similarly, you can't give somebody hens to lay eggs for half the profit. Similarly, you can't set up someone with an inventory of calves or horses, and have the shepherd raise them for half the profit. Unless you're paying him, if you're paying him as a worker, then it's okay. Same as the previous case. But the shepherd can accept calves or horses that if a particular value hasn't been put on them, then you can do it. Then you can raise them for half the profit. And by the way, what's the deal with these shepherds? They raise them until they're a third grown, or in the case of a donkey, until it can carry stuff. So that's when they become useful in the marketplace. So that would be the typical case of raising these animals until they're old enough to be valuable. So Tana, the Brisa teaches kafo al batel. How much do you pay? Like, what's the pay rate for these cases where you want to set it up so that the retailer is actually, it looks like an employee. Kapal batel, like an idle worker. What does that mean? My kapal batel, what does that mean? Rabbi, so by answers, kapal batel shall also malacha de batel mina. Like, if you'd pay, if you have a guy who is a storekeeper, a retailer, what would he take as payment to not go to work anymore, right? So So it's not really a pol batel that you would think that means that like just basic unemployment. No, it is what would you take to not what would I have to pay you if you not work anymore? That's essentially the real value of the guy's wages. Usricha. Why do you need all these cases of the Mishnah, the hen and the calves? The Itana and the retailer. The Itana Chanvani, we only talked about a retailer, Chanvani who decided like a batel, Mishum Nafish Tircha. Like that would be an appropriate wage for a retailer because he's not working so hard, right? He sits behind the desk. Avomos Likachban Peros. But the case where you're giving money to somebody to go buy produce and then sell it to nafish tirchai, that is, that's real work. You have to go out to the marketplace, you have to schlep stuff, you have to find it. Maybe he needs more money as a proper wage. If we only had the case of the guy that we're giving him money to go buy produce, that's where you have to pay him like an idle worker, because it's work. But the storekeeper, the retailer who's just sitting there behind the desk, not so much. Maybe just a small payment is enough. Even if all the retailer is doing is like just a small interaction, dipping his food into a sauce, or just ate one fig with him, that's enough. Like that's enough of a wage for this to be considered a wage. So tzricha, so you need both to tell you that both of these guys have to be paid like they're like an idle worker.
So what is the idle worker? He's not doing anything?
No, I mean, so that's what the Gemara is saying. You would think that that's what it means, but no. What it means is, what would you have to pay me to not work anymore? So essentially, what is the value of my job, right? Of my time, right?
So like a retirement?
Yeah, it's in other words, it's a misleading phrase. It's like if I say to you, you have a job, right? And I'm gonna hire you to do that job. I would have to pay you the real value of that work, right? So I would have to pay you whatever salary or whatever profit you're making in the job you have now. That's what I have to pay you in order for this to be a proper arrangement. So it's a misleading phrase, and that's why the Gemara goes, at length to explain it, right? It's not that just what you have to pay an idle, somebody who's on the who's unemployed, right? No, it's what you would pay for this person to do the work that you're asking them to do. Kama easy was trying to go in Malin Simon. So that this is the Simon for the upcoming sections. The first one is Tana Rabban. The rabbis teach Kama Huscharo. What is the wage that you have to give the guy? Ben Ruba Ben what? Whatever they agree on. Could be a large, could be a lot of wages, could be a small amount. Whatever they agree on is sufficient. Divrei Rabbi Meir. That's what Rabbi Meir says. That's enough to make it an arrangement that is not like interest, but more like a hiring situation. Rabbi Yehuda says, "I feel lo tavel imal betzir v'lo achal imal geras achas," like we just said a minute ago. Even if it's a very small thing, a very small wage he's offering, just a token, so schara. If they agreed with, that is agreeable. If it's agreeable, then that's the wage. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai Omer, Shimon says, no sin lo schara mishalim. He has to give him the full wage for this kind of business. So I'm not sure what the difference is between Reb Meir and Rabbi Shimon. Oh yeah, no, the difference is clear. Reb Meir says whatever they agree on, but Rabbi Shimon says no. In order for this to work, it has to be a market rate for how much he would get paid. Tana Rabbanan, the second brisa about this. You don't assess goats or sheep or anything that consumes but doesn't do any work. L'machza. You can't like farm that out for half the profit because that's like interest. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Shamin Saizim, you can actually assess goats mipnei shechovos because guess what? Goats give milk, so they do produce something. V'yasser achelim, and sheep mipnei shegozos v'shotfos umartos because even if you don't shear them, no, you do shear them. Even they have wool, they produce wool. Yes, that's Tarnagolas and a hen, because it produces eggs, right? So if they produce something and they consume, then they have a value. The Tanakama, what about the Tanakama? Giza v'chalav lo sipek schara malo mizono. Doesn't like everybody knows, like what does he think? That goats don't give milk and sheep don't give wool? Of course they do. So what's he saying? Begiza v'chalav kuliyama lo plige. We're not talking about it. We're not talking about where the shepherd takes the profits from the wool or the milk. Then if that's the case and everybody agrees, you can do that. Keep leaking. When are they disagreeing? Benasion ve'v'tosre. When they don't agree that you get all the milk, you only get the whey. Right, you only get the the thin liquid that is left after you make cheese, or the tosre, the like wool that like just kind of scratched off when it's wandering by the bushes, right? You can't shear the whole sheep. It's just this little bit of poor quality stuff that you're getting. So then Tanakama Savarle Kurabi Shimon ben Yochai. Tanakama holds like Shimon ben Yochai that has to be a full payment. You have to have a full proper payment for wages, and this doesn't amount to a full wage. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, several Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda holds like Rabbi Yehuda. That if they agree, even on a very small token payment, that's enough to make it a wage arrangement and not an interest arrangement. Next, Brisa Tana Rabbanan, Maskeres Isha Lechaverta Tarnagolas. A woman can rent a hen to her neighbor, b'shnei afrochin, for a particular fee, like 2 chicks, right? You can have this hen for a year, and as long as I get 2 chicks out of the deal. Isha shamar l'chaverta tarnagola sheli uvesim shelechi. But if you say, I'll keep the hen is mine, but you get all the eggs, vani v'at nachlok b'afrochin, and we'll split the chicks. Rabbi Yehuda Matu, Rabbi Shimon Oser. Rabbi Yehuda says it's okay. Rabbi Shimon says no. Why? Rabbi Yehuda Labai Schar Amalo Mazono. Doesn't Rabbi Yehuda say that you have to receive payments for the work and for the feeding of the hen? So since they're dividing the chicks, it's this business deal that how can it be that the owner of the hen does the work and provides the feeding without being paid? So the answer is Ika Besim Muzaros. There's other kinds of eggs. Okay, you can keep the strange eggs. What are strange eggs? So it seems like these are eggs that don't really develop properly. Now, what their value is a little strange. Like, who's going to eat those, right? But apparently, they can be eaten by people who don't mind these gross-looking eggs, right? Like, imagine you open up an egg and there's like a partially developed embryo in it. That's gross. You're going to throw it away. But apparently, the Gemara is saying that some people will eat that, so there is some value there, and that's what the owner of the hen can keep as wages, even though she's licensed the good eggs, the normal eggs, to the other person, but she gets to keep these strange eggs, these unusual eggs,
They
which are
don't
of
develop the
small value.
chicks, right? They
I'm
don't.
sorry?
Rashi says she'enan kotot efroach. They're not developing in the chicks.
Right. These are eggs that don't have a viable embryo in them.
Right. So they won't even if you open, they won't even look strange, and there's no.
So you can consume those eggs, or you can sell those, but not for very much because most people won't eat them, but some people will eat them. So those eggs are okay, there's some value in those eggs, and that is enough for this to be considered a business deal and not an interest deal. Tanu Rabbanan, next brisa, makom shenogu lahalos sar kataf lemos lebehema, in a place where where the practice is to pay a carrying fee, right? Sar kataf, like you carry this animal on your shoulder for an animal. So you have, you hire a shepherd to raise, a newborn animal. Now, that means that the guy has to carry around the animal, right? It's newborn, right? It's, if you want to take it out to the graves or whatever, you have to carry it. So that's work. So in a place where it's customary to pay that, Malin, then you have to pay that fee in one of these shared ventures. Vein Mishanin Mimila Gamadina, don't change from the local custom. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, Rabbi Shimon says, Shamin Egel Imimo. If the mother is around, then you don't have to pay any fee for this work. Why? Because presumably, as the Gemara I think is going to say, because the animal will follow. There's no carrying to be done. The animal will follow the newborn will follow the mother around, and so there isn't any work for the shepherd to carry it around. Even when it's customary to pay, so even so, it's still considered. You don't have to pay that fee. From Shimon Gamliel Labai Schar Malam Mazonot, doesn't Rabbi Shimon require that you have to get paid for the work you're doing? So Iko Glalim. So yeah, you are going to get paid. Like, you're not going to get paid the fee for carrying the animal around because you don't have to carry it. But there's still, what you do get is you get to use the dung that the animal produces. So again, just a token payment. Clearly, it's not worth a lot of money, but it's understood that you do get paid something. Vida. So why does the Tanakama? Why isn't that considered payment? Because that's not a payment. That's something that the owner is abandoning, right? He's making an hefker. No, he's not going to come and collect the dung, right? So it just sits there on the ground. The fact that you can take it is not because he's paying it to you. He's making it hefker, and you're picking it up. So it's not considered payment, not considered wages.
He's using it for, he can use it for fertilizer though, right?
Yeah, but it's I mean, would you take that as payment? For the effort of raising the animal or looking after the animal, you can keep the dung.
I can hear
So
it both
the
ways.
Gemara is saying yes, there is value there, but the fact is you would get it anyway, whether you were working or not, because I, as the owner, am not interested in that, right? I'm interested in the animal growing up and me being able to sell it or use it for milk or what have you, right? I'm abandoning the value that's in the dung. So when you, as the employee, as the shepherd, pick it up, that's not wages. You're picking up a found object. Okay. Okay, I guess we can stop here for today and pick it up at the 2 dots tomorrow. Thank you, everybody. See you tomorrow.